My name is Ashley. For the first 18 years of my life, the air around me was always thick with two smells: the sour, stinging odor of cow manure and the ever-present dust that Texas never seems to sweep away. My family lived in a tiny Texas town, so small it barely deserved a dot on the map. There was just one main street, one gas station, and a community where everyone knew everyone else. Our home was the least noticeable one, the poorest corner of that little place. We didn't own any land, just a tiny yard and a house my father built with scavenged wood and tin sheets. It looked more like a massive shack, rough plywood walls, leaking in summer, drafty in winter. I remember it was always dim inside because my father refused to cut in more windows. He said it would weaken the structure. My father was a man of few words, his back stooped early from years of hard labor. He worked odd jobs on nearby farms, leaving before dawn and returning under moonlight, exhausted. My mother managed everything at home, including the foul-smelling cow and pig pens. She always said, "If we raise one more cow, maybe we can save a little more for you and your sister's college." My sister, Sarah, was 4 years older. In my parents' eyes, she was the model good child. Gentle, obedient, never complaining. Her grades weren't stellar, but enough to get into community college. And me? I seemed born with rebellion in my blood. My parents had wanted a boy. They believed a son could change our fate. Instead, they got another daughter, and I could see the faint disappointment lurking in their eyes. That disappointment lodged in my young heart like a tiny thorn. I hated our poverty. It was tangible. It was the cold cement beneath my bare feet. It was when a neighbor girl wore a brand new dress and flaunted it, while I clutched the threadbare hem of my washed-out white shirt tighter. It was the humiliation of never daring to bring a classmate home. I was terrified they'd see our empty house, smell the livestock odor in the air, and whisper pity mixed with disdain behind my back. I was in 4th grade when my best friend invited me to her birthday party, my first time inside a normal home. Whitewashed walls, soft carpets, a huge crystal chandelier in the living room. Her bedroom looked like a fairy tale castle crowded with every kind of Barbie. I stood there, out of place, like a beggar who had intruded into paradise. At the end of the party, her mother kindly asked, "Ashley, where do you live? We can drive you home." "Iblir said, no, thank you, Mom. I live close, I'll walk." Then I ran like I was escaping. Under the Texas sunset, I sprinted until I saw our ragged shack, hid behind a tree, and broke down sobbing. From that moment, a single thought took root in my heart. I had to leave. I would never live like my parents. Sarah was both my reference point and the fate I desperately wanted to escape. After community college, she stayed and took a cashier job at the only store in town. Soon she married a high school classmate who worked at a mechanic shop. No wedding, no honeymoon, just a simple ceremony in the little chapel on Main Street. They leased a prefab trailer on the town's edge, in a neighborhood worse than our own. I visited once. The place was cramped and cluttered, thick with cheap air freshener and motor oil. Sarah, pregnant, was scrubbing piles of diapers while her husband lounged on the couch, watching football and sipping beer. Seeing me, she smiled tiredly and said, "Ashley, look, we'll have our baby soon." But I felt no warmth, only bone-chilling emptiness. How could she be content with that life? I swore, my future would never be Sarah's present. My husband could be ordinary, no savings, but he had to have a respectable job. We would live in a house in a big city, drive a decent car, not for vanity, but for security, dignity, and the confidence to say goodbye to my past. In my senior year of high school, I pushed myself and barely got into a little-known state university. When I received the acceptance letter, I felt no joy, only relief that I could escape. The day I left, I didn't look back. The Texas dust was finally behind me. I believed a new life awaited. University wasn't glamorous. To afford tuition and living expenses, I worked nearly every part-time job: waitress, retail associate, call center agent. I saw the city's glamour, but felt the sting of income inequality even more sharply. My classmates talked about designer bags, celebrity concerts, vacations in Europe or Southeast Asia. They dressed in brands, used expensive cosmetics, and lived effortlessly. Meanwhile, I worried every month about rent. I used the cheapest Android phone, wore clothes from discount shops, and often sat silent in social situations, feeling out of place. That inherent inferiority, magnified by the gulf of wealth around me, crushed me. To fit in, to appear less out of place, I made my first big financial decision. I bought the latest iPhone on installments. Pulling that shiny new phone from the box brought no joy, only hollow satisfaction. It was my first debt. The $100 plus monthly bill became an invisible shackle around my neck. To pay it and feed my growing vanity, I worked harder and began to manage myself. I learned makeup, fashion, and how to talk differently depending on the occasion. I understood that beauty was my only capital. Then Mike came along, a colleague at the call center, cheerful and bright. He pursued me hard: Starbucks every morning, weekend movies, a Tiffany necklace I'd longed for on my birthday. Most importantly, he offered to pay off my iPhone installments. With him, I first tasted being cared for with money. Not worrying about bills, buying what I wanted. It intoxicated me. I accepted the relationship but set a boundary: no living together. He took me to concerts, bought seasonal clothes, treated me to upscale restaurants. In a year, he spent over 10 grand on me. I believed I'd found a shortcut to my ideal life. I pictured our future. He'd propose, we'd live in a city house, and I'd sever all ties with my past. Reality slapped me hard. One day, I stumbled on texts on his phone, messages about crop yields and medical bills on an old-fashioned phone. I found his family's rural address, worse off than my hometown. At that moment, I felt like a fool. My carefully curated dream shattered. I ended it immediately. No explanation, just a cold, "We're not a good match." He pressed for reasons. I saw his shocked, hurt face and felt no regret, only fury at being deceived. I wasn't angry he was poor. I was angry he hid it, pretending he belonged to my polished circle of friends. Our breakup was ugly. He demanded I return the gifts. I laughed. "Are you joking? They were gifts." I never asked. "If someone gives me money, should I refuse?" He stuttered. "But we were dating. Those were for our future." I laughed harder. "Future? My future doesn't include liars." I blocked him on WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, deleted all photos, wiping him from my life. Later, I heard he badmouthed me as a gold digger. I didn't care. If he'd been honest, I wouldn't have given him a chance. He shouldn't have hidden the truth. That episode made me pragmatic and utilitarian about relationships. Love falters. Money is the only thing real. To escape Mike's harassment and start fresh, I changed jobs, became a cashier at a posh billiard lounge. Most customers drove luxury cars and wore fine watches, the aura I craved. I became aloof and unattainable on purpose. The more distant I seemed, the more they wanted to conquer me. Many asked to add me online. I politely declined, citing store policy. 6 months later, Jeff entered my life. Jeff, in his 40s, average-looking, a bit overweight, thinning hair, but he arrived in different sports cars each time. He didn't make grand gestures, just played pool, occasionally watching me from behind the bar with a complex look. He didn't approach me directly. Instead, a friend tested the waters. I caught on immediately. I gave a polite noncommittal. "I'm focusing on work now, I'm not dating." To him, that sounded reserved. From then on, Jeff launched a full courtship, anonymous flowers every day, waiting at the door when I finished work, saying he was passing by and could walk me home. I always declined and gave the flowers to co-workers. I didn't feel anything for him. I'm 5'9" tall, about 175 centimeters. In heels, I towered half a head above him. I couldn't imagine being with him. But his gifts, I couldn't refuse. Chanel perfume, LV scarves, and once, a top-spec newest model iPhone. I accepted it. That evening, I sold my old phone on eBay. The next day, I texted my manager resigning and changed my number. Harsh but necessary. I wanted him to face reality. I had zero interest, and to prevent further entanglement. Holding that new phone and seeing extra hundreds in my bank account gave me a twisted rush. It felt like a game. Use beauty as a chip, invest no emotion, reap the gains. I congratulated myself on my cleverness, unaware that shortcut planted a far more dangerous seed. Then came 2020, and COVID shut the world down. The billiard lounge closed. I lost my job. At first, I wasn't panicked. I thought it was temporary. I stayed in my tiny rented flat binge-watching shows, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max. I lost myself in fictional stories to numb anxiety. I also became obsessed with skincare, buying tons of serums, masks, and gadgets. Seeing that vanity altar of bottles gave me strange comfort. But soon, I couldn't laugh anymore. No income, but bills kept piling up. Rent, utilities, internet, credit card statements, BNPL apps pressing for payment. Each one an uncompromising reminder. I ran out of money. I couldn't tell my parents. They believed I was living a glamorous, successful life. I couldn't let them see my mess. Finally, I called Sarah. When she answered, I heard a baby crying. Her voice was tired but gentle. I lied. "A project went wrong. I need funds." Sarah didn't ask much. She paused, then said, "I only have $2,000 saved for baby insurance. You take it." Hanging up, I felt burning shame. I deceived the one person who cared most genuinely. But I shoved the guilt aside and vowed to repay her many times over. As the pandemic eased and cities reopened, I got a gig as a car show promotional model. High pay, hundreds a day. I tasted it and believed beauty was my strongest asset. I invested almost all of it into upgrading myself, injectables, skin treatments, thermage. I became obsessed with staying young and beautiful. I knew that was the currency I wielded. But that job was unstable. Shows were sporadic. Income swings came back. The insecurity returned. I needed something fast and reliable. That's when I discovered the emerging industry of game companion. I'm terrible at gaming, but have a nice voice and know how to engage men, satisfy their vanity. I picked a sweet username and posted on Discord and gaming platforms. Unexpectedly, business boomed. My clients were mostly lonely or stressed men, some successful, some anime-obsessed college kids. They didn't care about winning. They wanted someone to listen, admire them, sweetly tell them you're amazing. I quickly learned the ropes. Spending 10+ hours daily online, switching tones and personas, being their perfect female fantasy. That job brought in $5,000 to $6,000 a month. That was huge. I moved to a nicer apartment, bought more luxury items, and finally felt I had the life I dreamed of. But the routine wore me down. After shutting off headphones, my apartment was deathly silent. I saw red indent lines on my face from hours wearing the headset. I looked like a stranger. I had money, but I wasn't happy. That money was bought with my time and emotions. I felt like a high-class prostitute trapped in a virtual prison. The real turning point came late one November night in 2023. After work, I scrolled Instagram. A slick ad appeared, a girl my age showing off her bank app balance, with music and captions about easy financial freedom. It struck a chord deep inside. I impulsively messaged the blogger. She replied fast, said it was an online gambling game, not gambling but investing, and if you learned the patterns, making money was as easy as breathing. I made another $2,000 today, she posted a screenshot. Investment, strategy, patterns. These words unlocked a Pandora's box of desire inside me. I convinced myself I was smart enough to conquer the game like I managed demanding clients. I only wanted money, faster, easier. So I registered and deposited $500. I remember the rush when I clicked bet. Fear, excitement, anticipation. Minutes later, I lost. Gone in under 10 minutes. Unwilling to quit, I deposited another $1,000. Same result. She reassured me. That's normal. You need to find the system's loopholes. Loopholes. Strategy. It gave me hope again. I began frantically researching winning strategies, diagrams, data analysis. I dumped my savings, tens of thousands, into it. Soon it was all gone. I'd lost my mind. Only one goal, break even. Win it all back. I started borrowing from loan apps. They were so easy, basic verification, and thousands came instantly. I jumped from one app to another, borrow, wager, lose, borrow again. Then came a night of miracle. I hit a few big odds in a row. My balance skyrocketed from hundreds to over 50,000. I hadn't just recovered, I'd earned an extra 20,000. I felt invincible. A genius who unlocked the universe's secret. I circled my room in ecstatic trembling, withdrew some funds, and splurged on a Hermes bag I'd coveted. Walking the street with the orange bag, I felt eyes envy me. I believed I'd cracked wealth's code. That victory erased my respect for risk. I started making bigger bets, sure I'd never lose. But my skill was fickle. More often I lost everything again, winnings, principal, borrowed money. Then the debts. Then the loans. My life spiraled out of control. I couldn't continue as a game companion. Waking up, the first thing each day was checking gambling sites. My emotions were a roller coaster, ecstatic when winning, furious when losing. I became volatile, ready to explode at any moment. I went into debt to cover debt. I had dozens of loan apps, juggling repayment due dates, borrowing again to pay the others, interest piling like suffocating snowballs. When loan apps shut me down, I turned to people. I lied to my clients, spun stories. My mom is sick, needs surgery. I was in a car accident, must compensate someone. Using that sweet voice, I faked sob stories to extract sympathy and money. Then I called Sarah again, this time to ask for $5,000. Sarah paused, then with unprecedented seriousness asked, "Ashley, what's going on? Are you gambling?" I bristled but denied. She sighed, "I'll lend you this one last time. But you need to stop. Don't lie to yourself." Her words struck a nerve. I hung up, furious at her preaching. I funneled every borrowed and stolen dollar into that abyss. I waited for another miracle. But no miracle came. All I had left was an abyss full of despair. I lost $430,000.